Hello and welcome. I'm Raziel, and apparently, since I've started building and painting Death Guard, Nurgle has blessed me with a cold, so please bear with me. So, vampires have been a staple of the fantasy genre for a long time, with the first story being written in 1819 called Vampire with a Y by John Polydorus. This was 78 years before Bram Stoker's famous Bloodsucker book, and we can go earlier still to the Virolacus. I'm sorry I butchered that ancient Greek there, I do apologise. Anyway, these were undead creatures that would feast on blood. So, Warhammer Fantasy was sure to include this evil undead monster. But being Warhammer, it would go 10 times over and have a whole family of them. The most famous of these vampires, of course, are the von Carstein family. Look, I know many lore videos when talking about a character in the lore would go into detail about their family and what their family done, but that's got nothing to do with the video. This video is about Mannfred von Carstein and his family. The whole family's worth of video on it, so. And Mannfred von Carstein was the last of the von Carsteins. Mannfred von Carstein is subtle and dangerous, a treacherous man with a devious streak a mile wide. According to legend, Mannfred was awake at the von Carstein ring's theft, and the glamour that struck the guards insensible that didn't notice the theft. Conrad was ravishing the empire. Mannfred, for a better use of his time, was to become a master in necromancy. Instead of trying to relive the past glories of Vlad von Carstein, Mannfred searched for forbidden spells. Now, this search for forbidden spells took him all the way to the kingdom of the dead. The search to magic of unlife consumed him utterly, only returning to the castle Drakenhof once he believed the kingdom of the dead had nothing more to offer, and he felt comfortable with his abilities. Now, when Conrad died, Mannfred became ruler of the Sylvanian hosts. Without question or equal, he took the crown, metaphorically speaking. His first act was to cease attacking the Empire. This was not an altruistic choice, or done with peaceful intentions. No, the reason to go on the defensive was a long plan. Because decades later, when the Empire and those contesting the throne thought Sylvania was no longer a threat. Also, Mannfred believed that given time and removal of a threat would cause the imperial leaders to fight amongst themselves. He was right. As I said, when those contesting the throne thought they were safe from the undead, and once more the empire was rife with civil war and infighting, Mannfred went to war with the empire. Winter of 2032 brought death and ruin to the empire. Mannfred's undead army marched over the Sylvanian border towards Altdorf, slaughtering everyone who was in their way. Imperial armies were quickly dispatched in this time of civil war. They didn't stand a chance against the army of the dead. Mannfred's victories filled the villages in his path with so much fear, the citizens chose to freeze to death in the snow instead of facing the army of the dead. Finally, the vampire lord reached Altdorf, only to find it was barren and deserted. There was no one defending the town. Mannfred felt joyous in what was to seem to be the easiest victory of this war so far. The Empire's great city was empty, served up on a silver platter, until a single man walked out onto the town's battlements. This was Grand Theologian Kurt III. The Grand Theologian started to speak loudly. It was a spell from the book Liber Mortis, a spell of unbinding. All of Mannfred's army started to crumble around him. Knowing he had been beaten, Mannfred, the most powerful of the vampire counts, retreated. It seemed in the decades of peace of the undead, the Empire had also been preparing for war against the dead. With his ego battered, Mannfred marched his forces down to the Reich, to Marienburg, fully intended to take the port. Unaware, the Empire had planned for for this, and Marienburg's army was ready for the Vampire Lord's army. This would have been bad enough if Marienburg hadn't started trading with the High Elves and allowed them to build a trading colony. There was Mannfred facing the Marienburg army, and now they were joined by a company of High Elves. Well, the early attack started well for Mannfred and his army, and the War of Marienburg started. And this was going the vampires' way until a high age by the name of Finrir used magic against the undead hordes and turned the tide of the battle. Mannfred's best plan now was a lengthy siege against the port town until the scouts of his undead forces reported the army of Outlaws was headed their way. So Mannfred went nope and nuked the hell out of there. So both factions started a running battle, where the Empire of differing states would get the upper hand and reduce the Vampire Count army to very little. But then the Empire dead would soon rise and replenish Mannfred's losses. So the battle would swing the other way. The undead would cross a border into another imperial state, only to be confronted by a brand new army to fight. This went on for a while neither side knowing truly who had the upper hand, until the skeletal horde had been driven all the way back to the Sylvanian forest. Mannfred's war against the Empire had successfully forced the Empire to put aside its petty squabbles and civil war and call a truce. They were not to make the same mistake twice, as now the joined Imperial forces, with the aid of the dwarfs, scoured the dark forests of Sylvania, destroying all undead that they encountered. Nothing stopped the army of the Empire, and at a battle of Halfen, Mannfred was finally felled by the Count of Steerland, and Mannfred's body fell into a great swamp, never to be found. Martin, the Count of Steerland, was given the lands of Sylvania, because no one else wanted them. And who was to say no to a great hero who just offed the most powerful vampire count that ever lived? Now, is Mannfred actually dead? No one knows. His power and influence would no longer be as great as they once were, and the bard Felix Jaeger and his friend, the slayer Gortrek Gunningsson, has said they have done battle with the vampire count as late as 2503. Are these claims trustworthy? A bard and an outcast dwarf? History says no. History says Mannfred von Carstein died at the Battle of Halfen, and no one would ever say history was wrong. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I do apologise for my cold. Have a great day, and don't forget down below are the links to Wayland Games. There are links to Forbidden Planet, comics, my comic, my t-shirt and merchandise, and of course Patreon, which I really need to check. So if you have subscribed to Patreon and I haven't put you on a video yet, your name up, I do apologise. It's just because I haven't checked it in a long time. Anyway, have a great day, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Bye bye.